Hi everyone, I'm Stan from Eagle Vision. I'm here again with Dom Cosentino. Dom, welcome.
Thank you, Stan.
And we're talking about acquiring high-rise office buildings in the CBD of Adelaide. Dom and his team have acquired about 3 different buildings of this nature over the last 10 years. And last time, while we talked about acquiring, this time we want to talk more about the management and how does communication work with investors and so forth. So, Dom, what does it take to actually manage an asset like that?
Well, there are 2 components to the management, Stan. The first is the management of the licence, the AFSL licence, right. And then the second is the management of the buildings. Mm-hmm. Now, the management of the licence is a very complicated matter. It is hugely governed, it is heavily governed by ASIC, and we have to meet a whole lot of requirements each time we meet. Mm-hmm. To that end, we have a responsible manager mm-hmm. that will ask the directors a whole lot of questions about the properties, whether they met the targets they were meant to meet, were there any complaints from the investors, and so on and so on. That's the management of the AFSL licence. Yeah. Then we have the management of the buildings. We have 3 very large buildings in town, and they require, like all buildings do, they're required to be clean, they're required to be maintained, they're required to keep the tenants happy. And so once every 2 months there is a directors meeting on the management of the buildings right. and how they're going, are they meeting the expectations, and then that reports to the AFSL licence. Right,
okay. And with the responsible manager, is that a person in-house or is it an outside person?
In our case, we've chosen, there are a number of people that are involved in this, or a number of professions. The first is the legal profession, yep. And we have an external legal group that come in and advise us. Mm-hmm. There are accountants, that's internal. We look after the accounting for these things. Yep. The responsible manager is an external person that we bring in to help us. Yep. And we're in the process of acquiring an in-house responsible manager.
Uh-huh. Okay, fair enough. And is that sort of part of the strategy going forward in terms of acquiring further sites?
Yes, it is. We want to be sure that we meet all of ASIC's requirements. Yep. Once you've done that, then the next step is to make sure that we purchase the best properties available.
Of course. And how about the auditing side of things? What do you do when it comes to that?
Well, because we have a wholesale licence, because we have many investors, we have chosen to audit everything we do. Right. So that all of the buildings each year, yep. when it comes to the accounting time, and for the AFSL licence, we will audit all of the accounts to be certain that everything is as required.
Yeah, of course. And what about the investors on the other side? How do you communicate with them? What happens there?
Well, we try to communicate, or we do communicate with them every second month. Right. This is what's going on. The properties are going well. We've got a new tenant. We've lost a tenant. Yep. The returns are these, and we try and get to our investors every couple of months. Okay. At the end of the year, we have an annual general meeting where we invite all of the investors in and we go through what happened during that year.
Yeah, fair enough. And what does it take to actually become an investor with your licence?
Well, we have a licence which only enables us to, it's called a wholesale licence. Right. And we can only have investors that have a net asset
obviously
position.
They need the sophisticated investor, but then how much more do you go into understanding who they are, what their intentions are?
This is important. The AFSL licence requires us to understand our investors, who they are, where they come from, whether they meet the requirements that we need. And I think that's to stop things like money laundering,
of course.
And things like that. So we have to have a very good understanding of our investors before we take them on.
Yeah, right. And what happens if, let's say, the investor's circumstances change like a year or 2 years in the process and they need to pull out? How easy or difficult is it for them to do?
Well, in the past, we haven't had that situation, I must say, Stan, but we do have a process within the and this is for all investors that are in there, we do have a process that investors can take if they choose to remove or get out of the fund, the investment, that we will endeavour to do that for them. And what we've found in the past is that we have had investors that have got out of the investment, and we haven't had a problem replacing them.
Okay.
They've been good investments, but for whatever reason, it may be divorce, it may be someone has died. Well, in those cases, they can get out of the investment.
Yeah, sure. Understand. So, look, that's all that we sort of wanted to cover in terms of the managing of the asset. It is an incredibly complex situation, environment to be in. So, thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure, Stan.